Hey friends, how you doing? It's Tim, and today we're going to talk about the struggles and breakthroughs of being an entrepreneur.
Here's the question. What's going on inside the minds of top achievers that cause them to make extraordinary breakthroughs both personally and professionally? My name is Tim Shurr, and I invite you to join me as we take a deep dive into the unconscious mind and discover how to transform your biggest dreams into a reality. Welcome to the How to Be Mesmerizing podcast.
Hey friends, welcome to the podcast. This is your pal Tim Shurr, and today we are talking about the challenges of being an entrepreneur or a business owner or somebody who is running a company or a corporation or a nonprofit or a family. So this is kind of like what it's like when I wake up in the morning. And so I just thought maybe you could relate a little bit, or it's just an amusing story to hear. But usually I wake up in the morning and the first thing I start thinking about is, what am I going to do today? And then I immediately, once I have more conscious awareness, begin to think, all right, what kind of attitude do I want to have today? How do I want to feel today? What is it that I want to experience or accomplish from today? Because I realize I'm never going to get it back. And then, of course, I get up and the chaos begins, right? Either somebody's not in a good mood, or we've got a whole bunch of stuff that's going on, or maybe one of my kids forgot something was going on today and told us last minute. And so now my wife and I are scrambling because we would like to plan things out, but it seems like our life's constantly changing so much that we never have the chance to even sit down and put a plan together. And even if we do have a plan, it always seems to change, and that's really hard, especially because my wife is a planner. And so I'm so used to having a million things going on all the time that I'm kind of like it's normal for me. And yet it's important for her to have a plan, and so I try to work that out. And then it's trying to get the kids off to school, trying to still wake up because we never get enough rest. And then I pick up my phone. And then the next level of the day begins, because when I pick up my phone, that's when I start thinking about, all right, who's reaching out? What fires do I have to put out? Who do I need to get back to? What new situation is about to show up through my email or through a voicemail or through a text or through a Facebook Messenger text or through a LinkedIn response or through an Instagram question or through one of my 4 Facebook pages, or from somebody in our Lose Weight Easier community, or from an HR director who's reaching out because of a question that they have, or because somebody wants to book a speaking engagement, or hey, we were going to come in and have you do a live event, and now we've decided that we're going to do some recorded video as well, so we need you to come in on this date as well. And oh, by the way, somebody else is waiting on some emails, and then one of my employees is, in a situation and needs my help. And then all of that happens at the same time. And then, of course, there's taxes to be done, right? And there's, when you're a business owner or when you're an entrepreneur, you're really wearing all the hats, right? So I am my accounting department. I am my sales department. I am my delivery department. I am my shipping department. I am my creation department. I am the visionary for the department, I'm the CEO, the CFO, right? I take care of all of those things. Now, I have added some people to my team who have taken some of that pressure off, which is awesome, right? But I haven't had many people, because I used to run the big office with, all the employees and all the overhead and all the pressures that go along with the big advertising budget and managing all the employees and managing all the customers and everything else. And it was exciting and fun, but it was also stressful and a lot of work. And when you're an entrepreneur, you don't know. It's not like you work for a company and you get a steady paycheck and you know what you're going to make and then you can budget. In my line of work, I never know what I'm going to make. I can make a lot, I can make nothing. I mean, there's been weeks where I didn't make anything at all. I mean, there's been several weeks in a row where it was like I wasn't making anything and I was spending money like crazy. That's happened so many times. I've built things up and then they ran through their cycle and then they disappeared. I've had to open offices and close offices, or especially early on in my career, I've had to let people go and close locations because I couldn't afford the rent. I remember my very first official office. No matter what I tried, to do, I could not get customers to come in. And so then, my landlord actually gave me 2 or 3 months free rent to get back on my feet. And I still had to surrender the office. And that is a blow. And then, it messes with your confidence and it messes with your motivation. And then pretty soon, there's been times where, I wanted to just hide in my basement or under the bed and give up and quit and go find a 9-to-5 job because it was too hard and too much pressure. And I always had to try to motivate myself, and I was the motivator for everybody. And then how do you keep yourself motivated? And so, it's been a crazy ride. And to say that all of it has been fun would be a lie, because so much of it has been stressful. And I've had a positive attitude through so much of it, but there have also been times where I was scared to death, where I was so stressed out, I was so freaked out, so many nights where I did not sleep because I just could not stop worrying about, am I going to be able to pay my employees? Am I going to make salary? Am I going to make payroll? Am I going to, what taxes? I've had different situations with my accountant where he would just suddenly decide to let me know that I owed the IRS $30,000, right? And for some of you, I have friends that have said, I ended up owing the IRS like $500,000. And I've had other people that said, if I owed the IRS $30,000, I would jump off a building. So it's all relative, right? All the numbers are relative. It doesn't matter how much you make or how much you don't make. I remember my first experience with a financial planner. He sat down with me and he said, you're saving just fine. You don't have a savings problem. You have an income problem. So pretty much he was telling me I don't make enough money. And I'm like, well, thanks for that kick in the gut. Thanks for, making me feel like even less than a man. And so, all of those frustrating experiences that go along with growing. Now, through that experience, I have learned how to think like an entrepreneur. And only, maybe 5% of the population are real entrepreneurs. Only 10% of the population are really, really leaders. The rest are either wannabe leaders or they're just really good followers. There's a lot of people that are like, hey, and I've considered this too. I'm like, I don't care about being the star. I just want to find someone who's awesome and I want to follow them and be a part of that ride. I want to be a part of that journey, and that's enough for me. I don't want the pressures of having to run the show. I don't want the responsibility of the buck stops here, and ultimately being the one that's responsible. Because I remember that experience and how hard it was for me to let go when I actually had employees start seeing my clients, because I knew that I was going to do everything I could to get clients results. And I knew that the employees that I hired, I trained them so that I knew they were what they knew and what they didn't know and their level of expertise. And I knew they weren't going to be able to deliver as good results as I could. But at the same time, there was only one of me, and they did deliver great results. And so I felt comfortable as time went on sharing more of the responsibilities. But at the end of the day, if the customer wasn't happy, it ended up in my lap. If there was a refund, it was coming out of my pocket, not out of my employees, right? If they slammed the business, it was my family business. It wasn't my employees' family business. And so there is a tremendous amount of pressure that goes along with being in charge. And what people usually see is all the stuff that goes with it. So they see the nice house, or they see the pool in the backyard, or they see the nice car, or they see you on stage, or they see you on TV, or they see most, trainers and consultants and speakers and business owners are always showing you their best stuff, right? Like some people on Facebook it's like bragging. All they tell you is the best stuff. They don't tell you the worst stuff, which is why so many people, there's kind of a movement to be honest and vulnerable. Women are showing up without any makeup on. I remember Jamie Lee Curtis, she was doing that. She was showing up without any makeup on. She was showing up without any airbrushing in the ads. She was showing up being totally real and honest, showing women that so much of what you see is fake. And don't get caught up in it, and don't try to make yourself think that you have to be, totally thin as a pole to be beautiful, because it's a lie. And My wife was in the modeling business, and she said that she would go in. She had a real high metabolism, so she would say, I used to eat whatever I want, and I'd still make my weigh-ins because they used to make you go weigh in every week and measure you. And you'd have these skinny people, and these horrible people in charge would say, oh, well, you look fat. It was just really a destructive industry. And she said so many people were in the bathroom throwing up, smoking like crazy, doing drugs instead of eating, just to maintain what they thought they needed in order to have a job or in order to feel beautiful. And so it was such a demeaning profession. But what we do is we see supermodels like Heidi Klum, and we think, oh my gosh, they're so lucky. But you don't see all the other stuff that goes with it. So there's all the... I'm not trying to sound like doom and gloom. I'm just saying that this is often what it's like, right? This is the reality of, being a speaker. Like, when I started traveling around, it was fun at first. Some places were better than others. Like, so when I worked for Amway, my hosts, I would go in, as soon as they would pick me up in the airport, they would drive me to the hotel. They usually send someone to pick me up that wasn't a professional driver. It was someone that was a part of their team. So they were super friendly, and their goal was to make me feel cared for and like I was special. And then they take me to the room. They'd carry my baggage. They'd carry my luggage. They'd be like, here, let me get your suitcase for you. And I'm like, what? Oh, I can do it. And they're like, no, we got this. I'm like, well, this is really weird. And then we would go to the room, and there'd be a gift basket sitting in there with a handwritten card and some snacks and a bottle of water. And I'd be like, this is awesome. I love this, right? And I'm starting to think that this is what it's like every time. I would get on stage, and they would give me a standing ovation before I even spoke, before I even said a word. And then a guy to standing ovation afterwards, whether I was even good or not, which I'd like to assume I was. And then it was like, oh my God, this is how it is. And then I kept doing programs. And then I realized, holy smokes, it is not like that. A lot of times it's last minute. There's very little communication. Things are changing all the time. You go into these hotels. A lot of times you get there late because they're trying to save on the airline. You take the red eye. You're tired. The room's not ready for you, or they don't have a room for you, or someone forgot to book it. You've got to rent a car and get there on your own. You're tired. Then, like me, I want to make sure my programs are always awesome. So, I'll be editing through the night in my head. I'll get up in the morning and go through it and change it last minute. I got to make sure it matches, because usually you have to turn in your PowerPoint presentation about, a week or two early, which is hard because a lot of speakers are changing and making modifications to their PowerPoint like almost to the day before. It's very common. Unless somebody has been doing the same speech. I've seen a lot of pros out there give the same speech. Wayne Dyer and Brian Tracy and a lot of the pros, and maybe it's just because they have a good speech and they don't need to mess with it. But I've seen people get up, and I'll see them, and then like 5 years later I'll see them live again, and it's the same exact speech. It's the same exact PowerPoint. It's like, I can't do that. Mine changes every single time. Like every single time. It's a little ridiculous. But I always think I can make this word better. I can make this picture funnier. I can make this point stronger, because I'm always learning. So I want to keep delivering on what I'm learning. And I think a lot of other people do that too. At least the best people out there are doing that, because it matters to them still. So those are the stressful things that happen. I remember when I went on the road and toured for like 3 months in a row. That was fun, because that was actually following blizzards, going to rural places where there was no restaurants around. I was literally eating out of a gas station. Right? Living out of airports, getting used to different beds every night, wondering, hoping, praying that the person in the next room isn't going to be screaming or fighting or yelling or doing other things really loudly all night long. And you're like, really? And so, all those fun things that you don't think about, because again, it's glamorous being a speaker and being on the road and doing all these things, and people treat you like a celebrity. Yeah, that's the fun part for the 20 minutes or for the hour, right? The rest of it is a lot of work. And so, okay, again, let me get to the good part though. The good part is what it teaches you and how you learn to think like an entrepreneur. And I'm going to do a different podcast on what it means to have a digital mindset, because that's a kind of a hot topic that I'm noticing the last couple of years in corporate America, is trying to get people who are used to using paper trails and who are used to doing things a certain way, who now all of a sudden have to do chats and have to have smartphones and have to use new interactive software, and it's freaking people out because they didn't grow up with that technology, and they're afraid that the younger generations are going to steal their jobs, and it's just creating a bunch of problems. And so they've come up with fancy terms like digital mindset, which is basically just get used to the new software, that's out there, and use it, and connect with customers in the way they want to be connected with. So it's a whole new world, and people are trying to get used to it. And of course, people don't like change that much, and so they don't want to get used to it. They want to keep things the way they have been, and that just doesn't work. So it causes people in the business world to start thinking like entrepreneurs. So here's a couple of thoughts. Yes, I'm finally going to get to it because I've said it like the third time now. So entrepreneurs are always thinking on the fly. We're always getting feedback. In Silicon Valley, they say think first, they say fail first, fail fast, fail often, because failure is just feedback. You learn, you adjust, and you continue forward. There is no failure, there's just feedback. So many people are afraid to make mistakes that they don't try anything new. They keep running the same things by their bosses over and over and over instead of just taking action. Now, of course, that's often trained into them. If you have micromanagers, if you have people that yell at you, which that is more common than not. If you have people that are sarcastic, that ridicule you, that are control freaks, there are lots of people out there in management or leadership or supervisor roles that are terrible leaders. They just are. And they shouldn't be in charge of people. And they are what's crushing morale. And then they will go and tell their superiors, they'll say, hey, and I don't like the word superior, but their leaders, they'll say, hey, these people don't care, they don't want to learn, they don't want to work. And in most cases, that is 100% false. I'll say that's 99% or 98% false, right? There's plenty, most people do want to work, they do want to make a difference, they do want to know that what they're doing matters, they do want to be appreciated, they do want others to notice how hard they're trying, they do want to feel, or they do want to be cared about, they do want to feel significant, they want all of that. Remember, people don't leave their jobs, they leave their leaders. And so if you have poor leadership, and of course nobody wants to admit that, but that's often the biggest problem. That's why when I go to do any kind of a program, I always want to work with the leaders first, because, or the middle management, because that's where it breaks down, at the top or in the middle. It's not usually because of the bottom, and it's almost not always, I don't know how to say that, but it's typically not the employees either. The employees have learned how things work. They've learned, if they don't have a strong culture, what the loopholes are. They've learned how to get away with things, and they've learned how to protect their own assets, right? And that's about it. And so, you don't focus on changing employee behavior. You focus on changing leadership behavior. And then that's what creates the new morale, the new engagement. So in order to do that, you have to want feedback. You have to say, I can always get better. You've got to want to grow. You've got to be coachable. And entrepreneurs are often very coachable unless they get real successful, and then they start to think that they know it all. But most of the time, the best people, even Tony Robbins, he's like the #1 best known motivational speaker on the planet. He doesn't like the word motivational, but we're not going to go into that. But he's the #1 personal development success coach on the planet, and his brand is the #1 for that. And he still says that I go and I learn and I get training all the time, because he has to keep learning. He makes mistakes. He got videoed, making a mistake, not being having as much empathy as he should have in a situation, not recognizing that he towers over people, and he just made a bunch of mistakes that normally he should have been aware of, and I'm cutting him slack because nobody's perfect, right? And he openly said, I guess I still have more to learn. We always do. We always do. But in his programs, he would always tell you that I always want to learn. I'm always hiring coaches because there's always ways that we can become better. If you think you know it all, that should be a red flag for you that you're in trouble. If you already think you know this, you don't need more learning or coaching, then that's already a red flag that you probably need it really bad. Okay? I had a manager one time. I would come in to do it. This was for a mortgage company, and I was training their LOs, their loan officers, and this is before 2009, and when everything went crazy, right? But anyway, I remember he would say, all right, Tim's here. He's going to help us to improve our closing skills. And then he would walk outside, and for the next 90 minutes, he would sit outside and smoke cigarettes. And then I would ask him. Now, I wasn't as confident or courageous at the time. So, I would ask him, hey, are you going to stay in and hang out? Because people would love for you to be in the room. And he's like, no, I already know this. This is really for them. If I was in that situation now, I would be having a stronger conversation with him and the president of the company, because that leader was a big part of the morale problem that they had. That brings up another memory I had of a time when I was working with a company. What was this company? It was a life insurance company, right? And so I was working with the life insurance company, and the president of the company happened to sit in the room to see what I was teaching, and the training went well. The president of this company said that the morale is down and people are struggling, and doesn't seem like people are motivated and they're having a really hard time, and I need you to come in there and just motivate them and get them out there making, selling policies. And I said, okay, let me at them. And so we spent the next 2 or 3 hours, and by the end of it, these people were on fire. They were pumped up, they're high-fiving each other, they're excited, they're energized, they're ready to go out there and tear it up. And then the last 10 minutes of the meeting, the president said, okay, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up the meeting, and then we're going to get out there. And so everybody's like, awesome. So I sit in the back room, as I usually do, because I just want to hear how it ends. And then usually, I talk to people afterwards if they have any questions on the side. And I sit in the back room, and I watch the president in 10 minutes take apart everything I had created in that 2 hours and 50 minutes. The president pulled out a PowerPoint out of nowhere with these slides that showed how bad the numbers were, and went immediately into, look at how terrible this is, look at how much we're losing, look at what a crummy job we're doing. And I literally watched everybody, all that enthusiasm, all the energy, it was like in slow motion. You just watch it just drain out of them. They all melted back down and slouched in their seats. They lost the energy. They weren't smiling anymore. Nobody was happy anymore. No one was cracking jokes. The energy was sucked right out of the room. And I was sitting there going, OMG. Now, of course, this was early in my career, and so I didn't have the confidence or the skill set to be able to tell the president that it was them, right? Now, of course, I would, but then I didn't, and that was the only time we did anything, and things improved because they put what I taught them into action, but the momentum was gone, and I was like, oh my gosh. So another thing you have to do when you're an entrepreneur is you've got to look for the good. You have got to find the rainbow. It doesn't matter how hard it's raining, the rainbow's coming. And you don't get the rainbow without the rain. So entrepreneurs are always trying to find the silver lining because it's what keeps us going. Your attitude is more important than your strategy, because if you don't have the right attitude and mindset, then you won't create any momentum. You won't put what you've learned into action. It doesn't matter if you have the best business plan available. It doesn't even matter if you have the best values. It doesn't matter if you have the best support. If you are not feeling good inside, then it won't matter. A lot of times when I started coaching business owners personally, we spent a huge amount of time talking about their marriage. And a lot of times business owners would say, well, maybe we shouldn't spend so much time talking about this because I'm here to grow my business. And then I would have to point out the reason your business is struggling is because you're bringing all of that frustration and low energy and disappointment and anger from your marriage into your business. You can't separate it. And then you're bringing your frustration from your business not performing into your marriage. So it's very difficult to separate the one from the other. The happier you are in your home life, the more successful you are in your business. And not always the other way around. You can be very successful in your business and your home life is still not good because you're putting all your attention into your business, because that's where you feel good. That's where you get your self-esteem. And then you come home from your relationship and it's like you feel like a punching bag, or nobody's feeling good. And so, but you don't have the leverage. Like company presidents will say, I feel so good when I'm leading everybody and everybody's supportive, but I come home and everybody thinks I'm an idiot and nobody listens to me, and I tell them to do stuff and they don't do it. I don't have the leverage. I'm like, I understand. Heck, I'm a motivational speaker, right? I'm supposed to be a specialist in human behavior. And yet when I'm communicating with my family, they'll look at me and they'll be like, you're just an idiot. You don't teach anything. What if I used to hear Wayne Dyer say that his kids would tell him, he had like 50 kids. And of course, his wife raised them all because he was always on the road, right? And he couldn't understand why she divorced him down the road. But now, of course, that's a summary and that's not fair. But there's a lot of accuracy in that. And so he would say, oh, well, what if your readers could see you now, right? And my family has pulled that card on me too. And then I have to stop and I have to think about that. Instead of defending, instead of just getting mad, instead of feeling sorry for myself, instead of thinking how unfair that is, I have to stop and go, wait a second. That's probably accurate. Because I'm trying to stay coachable, I'm trying to stay open to feedback. And sometimes feedback is painful, right? A lot of times feedback is painful. Not always, but a lot of times feedback is painful. But that's okay, because you know what's worse? Not getting feedback. Not getting feedback is way more painful. Please get that into your nervous system. Not getting the feedback keeps the problems growing worse. It makes it worse. If I have a wound in my arm and somehow I don't know it, and suddenly I know it and I feel the pain because I see this wound and I'm like, oh my gosh, and I feel the pain. It's way better to have that pain in that moment than to not know that a wound is there, and then it gets infected, and then it gets worse, and then I lose my arm, and then, it just goes on and on. It's way better to have the discomfort now and then let the healing begin. So I need to change my approach. I don't need to defend or justify. I need to adjust my approach, right? We're adjusting, we're correcting on the fly. You have to think like an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs are always testing. We're always trying something new. Sometimes my wife or other people that my employees would get frustrated with me because they're like, we have a plan, and then you go and you change it. And then I have to explain to them, it's not that I'm trying to change the plan. Sometimes I'm making adjustments on the fly because I've just learned new information, or I just got feedback, or I'm realizing that what we're doing isn't working. And so we need to correct. We need to course correct. I'm not going to stay on a plan that's not going to give us the results that we want just because it's a plan. But people crave the security of a plan. Like when I'm driving with my GPS, with my GPS, it will sometimes make course corrections, or it will redirect, or it will say, you want to save, a mile and a half, take this shortcut, yes or no? And then I'll hit the button. And then to save time or avoid the accident or the traffic or whatever's going on, it'll course correct. I don't say, no, I'm going to stay in traffic, or I'm going to take the long route just because this is my plan. In fact, my GPS, there's a lot of, it's not always a straight, in success, it's never a straight shot from A to Z anyway. But when I'm trying to get from my house to the expressway, it's not a straight shot. And there's lots of neighborhoods and there's lots of ways the GPS can take me. And what I have learned is that usually my GPS will take me through a bunch of neighborhoods, and it takes me through a longer route when I'm trying to get to the expressway than the way that I know because of experience. I know that I can cut around all of that where there's less traffic, and I can get right to the expressway and make it easier. And so if I put my GPS on, like let's just say I'm going to an airport, right? I put the GPS on. I ignore it for like the first 15, 20 minutes because I can get to where I'm going faster than the GPS will tell me simply because of my experience. And it's still a computer program. It doesn't have all the experience that I have. That's why it's hard for computers to replace humans, because they do not have all of the experience that makes us human. You know, sometimes computers are better because it gets rid of the emotion, but sometimes you need the emotion, right? Especially like in healthcare or something like that. So when we are going through life, sometimes we need to course correct on the fly instead of just sticking to a plan. Other times we need to stick to the plan because that's what we agreed upon, and it might feel hard, but that's what we agreed upon, and so that's okay to stick to the plan. And so you've just got to figure out what kind of situation you are in. But we're able to think on the fly, we're able to course correct quickly, we're able to stay coachable, get feedback, and we're able to also make sure that we are looking for the silver lining. Whether you're troubleshooting or you're a solution finder, it's two different approaches trying to get to the same outcome. Either one of those is fine, but you still have to find a way to stay motivated, to stay inspired, right? To keep yourself going. Because without that, it's too easy to give in and surrender to the constant problems. Because every time you solve a problem, then there's another set of challenges that go with it. Every time you have a new goal, you have a new action steps, and those new action steps come with a set of challenges, blocks, obstacles. It's like playing a video game. Every time you get to the next level, there's another obstacle that's a little harder to get around. And as you keep playing, as you go up the levels, the obstacles get harder because it's a harder level. Now, we expect this and actually like it when we're playing a video game, but we don't like it in life. We think that everything should just be easy in life, and that is not the case. And so, then we want do-overs, and, just like in video games, you can have a do-over, but you have to pay for it, right? But most of the time, you can't have do-overs. You just have to take where you're at now and do better with where you're at. It's not a do-over, it's a do better. What am I going to do better with where I'm at? So, and then it comes back to, okay, what's the feedback I'm getting? What do I need to adjust? What can I correct? How can I correct on the fly? Who can I lean on for support? What new resources do I need? Right? So that we're getting out of our head and we're getting some outside help, support, and feedback. It's so important to have that. Human beings are relational creatures, and we also have blind spots, and so it's so hard to try to make big changes on our own because all we have is our own story and viewpoint and perspective, and we're trying to grow. You need more information than that. You can't grow with what you know. You have to create a stronger mindset, create more knowledge or awareness or have more experience so that you come to the same situation with a different level of awareness, and that is what takes you to the next level. Entrepreneurs recognize that, and so for them, it's all about momentum. It's not am I happy or am I sad, it's am I making progress. If I'm making progress, then I feel excitement, and that excitement is happiness. If I'm not making progress, I feel like totally depressed and in despair, right? And it's very easy to feel high as a kite and totally depressed within an hour of it, on the same day. So it's very easy to get caught up in stuff like that. And that's why we've got to make sure that we have the support in place. And so it gives you greater flexibility, it gives you greater choice. You're always working on your attitude, you're always working on your beliefs, you're always working on what you're saying to yourself, you're always working on making sure that you have an environment around you that allows you to succeed. That's what the people that are the happiest and the most successful are doing. They're using those I call them my 4 pillars of success, right? And that is you're upgrading your beliefs, you're creating a supportive environment around you, you're making sure that you're paying attention to the story you're telling yourself with your daily self-talk, and then you are conditioning yourself emotionally to use pleasure to create momentum and use pain to keep you using momentum as well, instead of using pain to keep you from taking action or to hold you back from trying new things. So that's it. Okay, that's my little perspective on, how entrepreneurs think and how important it is to have that kind of mindset flexibility. In neurolinguistic programming, I've been talking all day long, and I think my mouth is not working. In the field of neurolinguistic programming, there is a presupposition that, just a pre-assumption, right, that the person with the most behavioral flexibility is the one in control. And that just means the more ways you have to look at the situation, the more tools you have, the more ways you're able to approach the situation, the more in charge you are. Because most people are one-trick ponies. I have one communication style, and this is how I do it. I have one way of responding to situations, and this is how I respond or react, right? I have one perspective. I have one set of beliefs. I have one set of values, and that's how I approach everything. And usually these are not going to be people who are good leaders, because what you're dealing with when you're a leader is other personality types, other values, other ideas, more diversity, different than you. And if you don't have the ability to adapt, if you don't have the ability to shift, then it's not going to go well. And then you'll probably blame it on them. And at least half of it is because of you. Okay? So even in controlling relationships, even when somebody's verbally abusive, it ends up that your half of it is that, well, you're codependent. You're allowing that to happen. Okay? And so a lot of times people don't want to hear that, but when they look back, they're like, yeah, that was accurate. And so we've got to, it's not blaming the victim, but it is taking responsibility for what's my role in it. And this goes for work, it goes for your marriage, it goes for how you're raising your kids. Our kids my two boys are amazing human beings. They're thoughtful, they're compassionate, they're smart, they're caring, right? But they also a lot of times don't clean up after themselves, because my wife and I love them so much. We've just taken care of them, and we have, we didn't beat them. I used to get swats. I used to get hit with a belt. If I got in trouble, I'd have to pull my pants down. I'd have my underwear on, but I'd have to pull my jeans or my shorts down, lay on the bed, and then my mom would take the belt and beat me with it, right? Which was horrible. But in the 70s, that's what they did. And, corporal punishment. I got hit by a big board by my principal in school because I was talkative. Now I get paid thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to be talkative. I'm talkative right now, but I got hit with a board by an adult when I was like 10 years old because I was talkative. Now they would have tried to drug me and say I was ADHD, which is ridiculous. Okay? I was just I wanted people to like me, so I would be the class clown because I didn't know how else to get attention, and then I got punished for it. And so when people walk around and they got that baggage in their head, that's what makes them act the way they do. But I have to own that now. I'm still talkative, but I have learned if I'm in a situation, the best trainers are the best listeners, not the best talkers, right? So if I have to talk, I usually ask a question, but I spend most of my time in my head going, shush, shush, be quiet. Don't cut them off. Don't talk over them. Don't finish their sentence. Let them talk. Let them finish, right? And then if I have to ask a question to redirect or to get to the point or, whatever it may be. And that has made me such a better trainer. And of course, the people that I train love me because I'm using these tools to make them feel validated and heard. My acronym of love, I'm loving them all the time. LUV, listen to, understand, and validate. I do it all day long, and that's why people love it, right? And then we get so much more accomplished so quickly, and then everything else just gets better, and people make money, and that's why I keep getting hired, because it's wonderful. People love the experience. People grow through their job, and then, of course, the bottom line is everybody's making money too, right? Or they're getting their funding because they have higher HCAP scores if they're in healthcare or whatever it may be, right? And so they're getting higher patient satisfaction survey scores. So, it's a win-win-win. But it comes back to owning your part of the situation. That comes back to how coachable are you? How much are you taking ownership? Now, that doesn't mean that entrepreneurs are, great at taking ownership and great at owning the situation, because they're people too. And a lot of entrepreneurs are very eccentric people who have a hard time following rules. they they have a hard time having a job. You know, I got let go from a lot of my early jobs because I don't know, I was crazy. And I often kidded and said I had to create my own career because I'm the only one that hasn't let me go, and I considered firing myself a couple of times through the 24-year odyssey. So it does certainly, just because you're a business leader or you're an entrepreneur, it certainly doesn't mean that you have all this down, but it does mean that you often will have greater flexibility because you have to in a leadership role. So, but remember, you don't have to have a title to be a leader either. You know, I've met many people that didn't have the title, but they were absolutely leaders and forces to be reckoned with in their company or in their marriage. And so just kind of keep that in mind, that it's so important to make sure that you have, you know, these, you know, this awareness, how important it is to be coachable, and how you do have to adapt on the fly, and you have to let go of the past, learn from it, but then instead of wanting a do-over, what are you going to do now? And then just keep correcting on the fly. And as you keep moving forward, I remember Joe Vitale, you know, we were at a hypnosis conference like 10 years ago. We both had booths and we were hanging out together and training, and the attendees that were there. And Joe came up with this new thing he was going to put in one of his 10,000 books that he wrote, you know, and he said, money loves speed. You know, money loves speed. He says, you get an idea and you act on it, and money loves that. Money will chase you and find you, right? And his idea was that you've got to act on things, right? Because so many times we have these great ideas and we don't act on them. And of course, you know, that's, you know, when you're an entrepreneur and you've got a million things going on, it's important to learn how to be able to act and adjust on the fly. So you got to also make sure that you're not impulsive, right? That you're not making too many changes. That's the flip side of it. For entrepreneurs, sometimes we're like that rabbit instead of the turtle, and so we're jumping all over the place and you know, digging 1,000 1-foot holes instead of digging one hole and digging all the way deep until you strike oil. And so that's the flip side of being an entrepreneur. So you have your pros and cons of anything. Our goal is to learn from it, figure out what our strengths and where our opportunities are, not our weaknesses, just our opportunities, and then really capitalize on our strengths, and then enroll other people into handling things that are our weaknesses, right? And getting, if it's their strengths, get them to do it, and delegate and inspire and enroll and all that good stuff. So, okay, I'm going off subject here. I'm starting to think about all these other stories, so I'm going to end this podcast and then create another one. I'm going to share another podcast that talks about core values and why that's so important, because that's where I'm about to go now, and I think I'll just create that as a separate podcast about creating core values in your company and why that's a huge competitive advantage, almost more than anything else. And then, because that's one of the main things I do with every company that I start consulting with. And then the importance of having core values in your family and in your marriage and with your children. And so, I'm not sure if I finished that point. So let me close that loop real quick when I was talking about my kids and how they sometimes don't clean up after themselves. And my wife and I are like, that's our fault. You know, we blew it with that because we didn't force them to. And I think it was because, you know, we got punished so much that we didn't want to do that for our kids. And now we have to find the middle ground. Now we have to make them do that and use consequences, because just being nice and telling them 50 times isn't working, and it's not fair on us as parents to have to tell them 50 times. And we're not going to hit them with anything, so we've got to create the consequences, because people learn from pain as well as pleasure. Pain is a short-term motivator, so we'll have reinforcement as well. But there has to be some consequences and hold them accountable so that they get it into their nervous system so that they naturally clean up after themselves afterwards, which is possible and will totally happen for them. We will cause that to happen, because I never cleaned my room. Everywhere was a disaster. Even in my office, I have so much coming at me all the time that, my desk actually looks kind of clean now. I've been doing taxes, so it's a little more organized, which makes me feel really good. But usually it looks like a bomb went off in a paper factory. And so I got stacks and stacks and stacks and stacks of papers and bills and training resources and materials and books and all these things everywhere. And so, however, I'm also like always cleaning and always picking up. And I see a little piece of paper on the floor or a little fuzz, and I go pick it up. I'm vacuuming, I'm always doing the dishes, and it's so weird that I'm kind of like this clean freak a little bit now, because I was never like that before. But things change. What matters to you change. Your priorities change. And your values will change as well if you're always growing. A lot of times those will be upgraded and polished and refined as you are upgrading and repolishing and refining. So keep getting better. You are amazing how you are, but we want to keep getting better. And maybe you are amazing the way that you are, but your behaviors are not amazing the way they are, and we need to upgrade that and separate the person from the behavior, right? It's not the one and the same. If I'm a messy eater, it doesn't mean that I'm a horrible, messy person. It might just mean that I'm a sloppy eater, right? I'm not, but it might, we want to make sure just because you have a broken arm, that doesn't mean you are a broken arm or that you are broken. It just means it's something that's going on. So we can always refine. And we refine through our core values, and that's the podcast that I'll be releasing after this one or before this one. Who knows, however Nor sets it up. But we want to make sure that that you're taking a look at that. So for this podcast, let's just make sure that you are being coachable, you're taking feedback, you are correcting on the fly when you need to, and you're always looking at what you can do to refine. And when you do that, you're going to find that your success is a sure thing. So thanks so much for listening. I appreciate you as always, and make today a sure success, and we'll talk to you next time. Make sure that you leave a review, a glowing review, because it helps so much to build our community. Share this podcast with your friends and family, and I will be forever grateful, and so will they. All right, thanks so much. Thanks for being awesome, my achiever. You take care of yourself. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye. Hey, would you like more free tips on how to be a mesmerizing leader? Then check out mesmerizingleadership.com, and also hang out with me on Facebook, facebook.com/Tim Shurr. Thanks so much, and make your day a sure success.